This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Okay, this is Joe Banis, the chair of this committee, and I call this meeting to order October 18th, 2022. One question or one comment I'd like to make before we get started. I got some feedback last week that there are folks who may not be able to hear, so I've been asked to speak slowly and loudly, and if we have votes that we need to do that as well, slowly and loudly. And I would ask that, I guess, and it's, as I look around, there's Louise, you're the only one with the mask on. So
And me.
Oh, and Cindy, okay. I would ask both of you guys to speak slowly and loudly because I find the mask tends to muffle your voice and I don't want to lose a scintilla of information in your comments. So, okay. I guess the first thing on our agenda is an approval of the minutes from our September meeting.
You got to, I think we left it off. We left it off there, but we have to take roll call.
Oh, you mean roll call. Okay.
Yes, and everybody say,
Okay. Let us take roll call. Who's the clerk who calls roll? You. This is like a test.
Just look around the room.
To make sure I know everybody's name. Okay, Louise Jacobs.
yeah,
Here. Tom Brown.
Here.
Kathy Schweitzer.
Here.
Here.
Chuck Connor is here.
sorry.
Chuck Connor.
Chuck Connor is here. Joe Banis, the chair, is here.
And Cynthia Terrell, director, is here.
And Stan.
And Stan, let the record show Stan replied in the affirmative. Okay.
Diamond.
Gotcha. Okay.
Is Pat here?
Pat's not. Pat's away.
Patrick Ruff is not here. Okay. Item 2, the approval of the minutes from our last meeting. Okay, we have what Louise sent out, and I think Cindy has produced an amended version. Does everything look okay on?
Can we take the amended version because I have incorporated it?
Sure.
Okay. So the only thing I wanted to, actually, there were several points that I wanted to raise regarding the minutes from last week. I guess number 1, it says Tom called the meeting to order. I think I was the chair of the meeting, so I was the one who called the meeting to order.
That's the,
Unless somebody wishes to,
No, it's,
okay,
It's Joe.
where is
yes,
it?
it's just,
Tom, oh, there it is.
okay. And then I guess maybe as part of that, the one thing I remember doing was welcoming Kathy to the board because she was a new member.
Yep.
So, and it just indicates that this was her first time on board.
Yep.
Okay, under 4, Roman numeral 4, the financial report, Cindy, you had made some clarifications to that.
sorry,
which-
backing up again. Is Crystal here or there?
Oh, Crystal, yeah.
Crystal's not here.
No Crystal. Have I missed anybody else?
Nope.
Okay.
Sorry. And was Chuck here last month?
I was not here last time.
That's what I thought. But I didn't get it.
Okay. Let me go down to Roman numeral 7. It says old business building. And it said the board discussed the preliminary building study attached. Do we really want to attach that study to the minutes?
No. No, it's that I attached it to the preparatory materials
Mhm.
before the last meeting. It wasn't
handed out at the meeting.
handed out at the meeting. Because
Okay,
it's preliminary. We don't have the final.
Right, it was only discussed, I guess. So
Right.
if it wasn't handed out at the meeting, I don't believe it needs to be part of the minutes. It was just discussed.
it was just,
Really?
so
It
just
wasn't handed, nothing was handed out.
Right.
So the minute,
strike, I'd say strike the attached part.
Okay.
the board discussed the building study,
Right.
just get rid of attached. We discussed it, but we weren't given anything.
Okay, that means we're discussing something that is not public and
No,
we're not in the.
The results
that
are
means
public.
we're-
The results were public.
it doesn't mean it's not public. It means we weren't given a document. We simply discussed it. We weren't given the actual study because it's preliminary.
You were given notes
We were
on the
given notes,
study, not the
information.
study.
We were given information about it, notes about it, but
Yeah.
we didn't receive the study. It's not completed yet.
What you received was you received the published ADA study results because that was published. You received the excerpt that applied to the Council on Aging. And that's publicly on the city website.
Okay, my only point was whether that document should become part of these minutes, and
Which I
understand they will not be.
Not preliminary. I mean, when
Not
when they're finalized, I'm assuming, Cindy, when the study is finalized and presented to the board as a document, that's when it would have to be part of the minutes because it was presented at the meeting.
Okay,
And I will ask them when we are getting the final report.
Yeah.
I don't know.
okay. Any other comments about the minutes? The only thing, Louise, is Cindy is always with a C.
I'm aware of that, but my
Well,
dictionary.
you know,
there's
your
also ano-
dictionary,
There's
it's-
another Cindy.
another Cindy, I mean, it sounds like Sinbad and
S.
Cindy.
No,
Louise, I'm sharing you the edits. I just followed along just so we can compare. I'll
Yeah, I
share
get
that document. Yeah.
Okay,
unfortunately, my autocorrect defaults to the head of the diversity or whatever at the schools, who is Cindy,
mhm.
Omar's wife.
Okay, well,
So,
we're good on that one then.
yeah, I
Okay,
used to.
could I have a motion to accept the minutes as amended?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Who said that?
So moved. I'm sitting right next to you. So moved.
Tom moves to accept the minutes, and second was Kathy Schweitzer, seconded. We need a vote on this, correct? All those in favor, Joe Banus, aye.
I don't think you need a roll call.
We don't need a roll call. Okay, Tom, aye. Louise, aye.
You'd say,
Aye.
it's unanimous.
Okay,
I abstain. I was not here.
One
okay,
abstention.
Chuck abstains. Okay, wonderful. I think we are in good shape at that point. All right, moving on to item number 3, public speak. I'd like to recognize that we have a visitor today who's a member of the public. Ed, your last name again?
Kazunas.
Azunas?
Kazunas.
Kazunas, okay. Do you have any comments you'd like to address the board with?
Not at this moment,
Okay.
You may not get another chance, so just say no, Ed.
but
Speak now or forever.
Now, hold your peace.
no, more interested in the building.
Okay. Good public speak. Is there anybody in, Leslie Button, you're also a guest today. Do you have any comments you'd care to address us with?
I have no comments, and I just, for others who don't know me, I'm a member of the Friends, EOCA Friends Board, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on from public speak, go to Roman numeral 4, acceptance of VCOA financial report. Cindy?
There, so there's no update from last time in terms of our non-city funding streams and expenditures. I don't have the latest on that yet. As for the city funds, we've made a change that will impact those, and I can just tell you what that is. Temporarily, my hours have been expanded from 35 to 40 hours per week. Because of the staff shortage we continue to experience. Both the positions we had open are still open. We're doing interviews this week. And then we've had a lot of sickness. So it's been hard to get my director work done during the day. I pretty much have to wait until everybody's gone home because I'm doing direct service. So, and just keeping the place open. So that was a nice recognition on the part of City Hall that it does take more time to just keep the doors open and people responded to. And that is temporary till June 30th. So that will impact the city funds. And I don't know how much until the hiring is complete. And I know how much everybody has to be paid. And then I'll re-budget, take a look at that, and then we'll see if we need to go for an appropriation to just cover whatever dollars are left to get through June 30th.
Cool. Okay. Any questions for Cindy on that?
Oh, and one more clarification. That does not mean the COA's hours will expand. I thought about it this morning. I thought, wouldn't it be nice if I could just say, okay, I'll be here every day till such and such a time. Come on in, people, to use the gym. And maybe we could do that once we get people hired. But right now, we should really save that so that I can create financial reports and do the budgeting and the other things that, I need to do at my desk. If
Okay.
that makes sense.
Okay, good. All right, moving on to our next thing, the Highland Valley report, which would be Pat who would give it. Pat not being here, we will hold that into abeyance until our next meeting. Okay. Roman numeral 6, director's report and form update.
Okay. So first, staffing, as I just said, we're still interviewing for the outreach worker position and for the principal clerk position, 2 full-time positions. We also have on Wednesday, tomorrow at City Council meeting, the item to create a new classification of program manager, which you've heard about as well, but I'll just repeat that we are asking the city to create a program manager. Then we will not have an activity coordinator. The program manager will subsume the activity coordinator work to some extent. And then the parts that are at the level of a clerk will go to the clerk. And then the program manager will take on additional work at that level. And people are invited to tune into that city council meeting. I think we're about a third of the way through the agenda with that item. Okay, other than staffing, just to call your attention to the fact that we have a tremendous number of appointments backing up without an outreach worker who is full-time. Our part-time outreach worker is scheduling out well into November for helping people with public benefits, with open enrollment for Medicare. And we have people coming from LifePath in Greenfield from the SHINE program to help. But I wanted to put a pitch out to the community that just in case we ever get into this situation again, it would be awfully nice to have some volunteers or senior task workers to be trained in at least doing fuel assistance which is something that Community Action must train people on. That training is tomorrow. If somebody wants to hop on board, you can still hop on board. It's a full day training, and then you're certified to do fuel assistance applications with people. It takes similar skills to, say, doing your taxes, just like detail oriented, looking at different documents, that kind of thing. And then in the spring and April, there is a training to become certified as a Shine counselor. Again, similar kinds of skills. We are looking for volunteers. Greenfield Life Path manages that program, but we could use more volunteers who live in Easthampton and are willing to come over and have office hours at the senior center. And one of the reasons for that is that whoever we get as an outreach worker likely is not Shine certified. The training doesn't happen until April. And so I think it would just be good to avoid being in this position again by having people who are certified, willing to keep up with that certification with a monthly meeting, and then we can give them clients. I asked ahead of time, since that work is done primarily after the senior tax work cut off of October 31st. What would we do? Because open enrollment is in November and December. The longest we could stretch someone's senior tax work off hours into the calendar year would be the first week of December, so they can do all the paperwork at payroll. So at least we could get 5 weeks, 6 weeks out of somebody to help with open enrollment. So it's just a thought. That would be a high quality senior tax work off job. That's all I have for today.
Okay,
Thanks.
Any questions?
questions?
Are you personally hanging in there?
Am I hanging in there? Yes.
You're not, your
I-
hair's not gray yet, I don't think.
It's coming back. My daughter's dye job is fading. I'm going on vacation November 3rd through 14th, and the 15th I'll just be recovering and working from home and doing our board meeting from home. I can put that into my report. So I have a vacation coming, and hopefully don't come home with COVID like almost everybody else does. So I'm excited about that, and I am doing well. I love this job. It's really wonderful. Thank you, everybody, for your support.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Just out of curiosity, where are you going on vacation?
I'm going out of the country to a warmer place. Not by my choice to go to a warmer place, but I am.
Like Venezuela?
Portugal.
Okay,
Okay,
Cindy, I might be interested for tomorrow.
for fuel assistance training, I'll talk with you about that right after the meeting. Thank you, Louise.
okay. Roman numeral 7, moving on to old business. And I think this is probably the most important topic that we'll cover today. And I've asked Tom Brown, who's been involved in a number of building efforts throughout the years in the city and has had considerable experience with this to bring the rest of us, or start to bring the rest of us up to speed as far as what is the process through which the city builds or acquires a new building.
Okay.
So Tom, the floor is yours.
Thanks. So we have had an opportunity to have some discussions with Joe, myself, and Cindy, just, the view from 30,000 feet. And I'm going to be referring to some notes just because at my age, I can't keep it all in my head. But I'm going to steal a line from Joe that he shared in an email, which the best way to describe this is it's a marathon, not a sprint. The school building committee that's going to wrap up in the next 18 months was started in 2015, and we cut the ribbon on the new school in September of this year. So you can see the process from beginning to end that it took. It doesn't happen overnight. And in that case, the city already owned the property, which we may not in the case of a new senior center. But the suggestion that came out of our conversations was that we would begin with an exploratory group, and I'm reluctant to call that a committee. I just want to call it a group. And that group would look at what other communities have done. How did they get from point A to the finish line? And help us potentially create an outline for moving forward. And Cindy's already reached out to several communities in the area that have, in the past, I would say 3 to 5 years, built a new senior center. And we would look to them for some information, some guidance. How did it work? Just picking their brain. And my recommendation at this point, based on our availability, is that group that would do this initial exploration would be Cindy and Joe and myself, if the board is agreeable to that. And again, we would just be exploring, gathering information, trying to create an outline of what they did. The more formal part comes later on, which is the establishment of a committee that may or may not actually be called or evolve into a building committee. And they would work, that committee would work through the various stages. And again, from my experience, it starts the bottom floor. The foundation is to identify the need. And some of that work's already been done with some of the studies that Cindy has had done, but you identify the need. So why does Easthampton need a new senior center? You basically try to answer that question, wrap your arms around it, which helps you to the next step, which is building the case for a new senior center. Here's what's not right with, I don't want to use the word wrong. Here's what's not right with where we are. And here's why we need a new senior center. A next very important step is a visioning process, which brings in, hopefully brings in a huge cross-section of the community. Constituents, if you will, that basically give you an idea of what would you like to see in a new senior center. And that doesn't have to necessarily be a room full of seniors. It could be folks that are younger, older, might be on the threshold of being a senior, what have you. But that begins to build what the senior center might look like. And again, it's a blank piece of paper. You try not to have any restrictions on building size. You get way outside the box. My analogy of that is throw it against the wall and see what sticks. Throw everything against the wall, and then you work later on to get back inside the box if you have to. Then there would be a feasibility study. So determining an appropriate site, get a general idea of what's needed, and if it's feasible, what's needed for a 21st century senior center. That's where you begin to go from here and begin to do this with it, get you to design, and then eventually get you to construction. Obviously, the most uncertain piece of all of this is funding, and the funding for a construction project of this size, unfortunately, we're not going to raise the funds by having cookie sales and bake sales or what have you. This could be anywhere from, including acquisition, this could be anywhere of $15 to $20 million project. And one other point about the committee, that formal committee, that is something that is even out of our hands. That is typically, if I'm looking at the school building committee, that's a committee that is set up by the mayor. It's an official municipal committee. And other than Cindy, there's no guarantee of who's on that committee. But if I look at the school building committee, it was comprised of a couple of members from the school building committee, some folks that were knowledgeable about the building trades. There was a marketing person on there. There's a broad cross section, and just some Easthampton citizens, Easthampton residents, if you will. So it's a broad cross section of the community that becomes this official building committee, and that's when the work really starts with the building committee. That's when you get into choosing an architect, and in this case, it's going to be looking at sites and things like that. So this particular project, it's a little more complicated because the last 2 schools we built on the site of the existing schools. So there was no question of site selection or acquisition or what have you. I'm not sure about our ability to build a new senior center on city-owned property. So that there may be some acquisition involved as part of that process. But again, to leave you where I started with the marathon, not the sprint, our goal is to get a new senior center. We should not today put a timeline on that. So we don't know how long this will take. We don't know how long each stage will take. But the goal is here. We can't just tell you when we get there. And Cindy, you had some information on that same agenda item about
building the
coalition.
coalitions in the community that you would need. I don't have all the answers to that. I just had some thoughts and then thought we could open it up to conversation to see, since you all represent a cross section of the community, what you think important, like what you would think, what kind of coalition you think we would need to move forward and move forward at a pace. So my thoughts on this, just personally, as somebody who's in my mid 50s, and thinking of the people that I know, I think there are some people in that age group that are interested in senior centers, but probably not that many. And it's more, and even into people in their 60s and 70s are in that category. But those people are the sandwich generation. You know, they've got kids or maybe slightly older than kids, and then they have parents. And so to me, they're super important to talk with about this because they're on the cusp, but also they're still they're looking at the whole lifespan as much or more than anybody else. So I just had, I was thinking about that and thinking of the people who are coming off the school building, sort of energy and drive and the excitement of opening it up. A lot of them are parents or their grandparents who were supporting that effort. And it would be great to talk with people about this, why would we want to do this when the city just had that big project? And then I think there's a lot of people involved with the library who will get it because, they know what it's like to be in an old building and they really care about that building. And then the Easthampton Community Center also needs a new space. And I think it'd be worth talking with their supporters because we don't want to be, some people think of it in terms of competition, whose turn is it? This process is going to take so long. To me, it's not about whose turn. It's about setting things in motion. Each thing is equally important, the library, the senior center, the community center, whatever. There are maybe others I'm not thinking of, and they all need to be worked on. And a lot of the players are going to be the same volunteers, the same, maybe board members, maybe staff. They're all, I said staff, sorry, I swallowed that word. And I think we need to be open and talking with each other. And so that, yeah.
I have a few questions. The first is, I'm trying, I think I need a different mask for meetings. Do we need to segment this? I know it's traditional, but have a senior center that's separate from the library, that's separate from the ECC, that's only used until like 4 o'clock. It's like we're segmenting, or is there any way we can, maybe the visionary process could.
Correct. I think I likened this in a conversation I had a while back with the mayor. I go back to my time on the building committee for the public safety complex. And we have police and fire under one roof. We had we had a dated fire station, we had a police station in the back of Old Town Hall. And I'll never forget, at a function I was at, the mayor of Northampton said, how did you ever get those two to come together under the same roof? And the answer was, they both realized that's the only way they were going to get a new facility was if they did it together. The reason why we didn't build 3 new elementary schools in Easthampton is they knew that one would be chosen and we'd have a brand new elementary school and we'd have an outdated middle school. So one would be their turn, so to speak, high school. How did that come together? By putting them all together into one. And if you ever have a chance to tour Mountain View School, it's literally 2 schools under one roof. The elementary kids never run into the middle school kids, totally separate. So to Cindy's point, you know, might the future of this facility look like, I hadn't considered library, look like a community center and a senior center that just happen to be 2 separate buildings, but under one roof? Is that the way you possibly get what you need and support from the community as a whole? I don't know the answer to that. But I think the coalitions, Cindy, reveal themselves in that visioning process. Who comes to the table? Who comes forward and says, hey, don't forget about this group, or don't forget about this group. But time will tell. Time will tell.
And I wanted to make the point, how does this relate to this board? Well, I don't know how other communities with Council on Aging boards have handled that, and we will find out. We will be asking, but I can imagine that a role, you know, so while the small group is talking to like the 7 or 10 councils on aging that came forward to say, we'll share information with you, and doing other research on funding or whatever we need to do, every member of this board could have a role in going to your network and the places where you belong and you work and you live, and talking with people and not waiting for coalition, not waiting for people to emerge. Because if we want to be inclusive and have everybody talking about this who might have any interest in not just a center, but the future of senior services, invite them, talk to them. And also some people may cycle, this will be a long process. Some people may cycle on and off the friends group, the board, the staff. We just need a continual stream of strongly interested people from all parts of Easthampton who care about the senior center. And that's really for each individual board member and for me, talk and talk and talk to people.
That's a great point. It reminded me that in the life of the school building committee, we had a new superintendent and a new mayor come in that process. So when we cut the ribbon, the mayor and the superintendent standing there weren't the ones that started the process. We had at least out of the 15 committee members, there were at least 4 that had started the process but weren't there. But as you said, replaced with equally active folks. It did trigger one other thought, Cindy, too, is the distinctions between our board and the building committee. And it's a fine line sometimes. We caught ourselves on the building committee starting to get into a discussion about, well, if we're going to build this in the new school, why would we use it? Why would we use it this way instead? And we time out. We're building a school. We're not determining what goes on inside of the school. That's the school committee's purview. So this committee is still going, think of it like a condo. The school building committee is going to build it, but the board and director are going to control what goes on inside of it. The school building committee is not going to, it's senior center building committee ultimately is not going to determine what you use that room for or that room for, or how you work that. That's a fine line. Sometimes it gets cloudy, that we have to make sure that, to your point, that the board has a role in all of this and the building committee has a role, and they shouldn't really overlap.
Hang on for 1 second. Stan, did you want to comment?
I did. I served on the senior tax work-off planning committee and the municipal internet planning committees. And this is just what we did. And we worked very successfully contacting other cities, other communities that had similar programs already running. And we got a lot of good information. And I think we wound up with, some good plans for both. Obviously, it's, the Senior Tax Work-Off Committee we're using through the Senior Center, and that's working very well. But also, I'm hearing a lot of talk about building a new center. I've seen a couple of buildings in Easthampton, in city center, that may be appropriate. One of them is the bank building that's now for lease on Main Street, which may be a good possible solution for us. The other one is the massage school, fairly close to that. So I'm not sure we want to talk only about building. There may be existing buildings that we may be able to utilize and save some construction costs. Just a thought.
Okay, thank you for that.
So one more piece that Tom and I didn't mention that I want to mention is there's this concept of the building program, which is what do you do inside the building? And that step, I think you were saying, Tom, of it. So the staff of the senior center needs to meet and talk more about, because we certainly talked about this a lot with that building feasibility study we just did, but that was with restrictions of the current building. What we need to do now is talk, the piece of white paper Tom was saying, if you could do anything, if you were all on one floor, if you could see, if you had an outdoor space, if you had enough parking and you could attract as many people as you wanted, what would you be doing inside that building? And that's a really important conversation for 21st Century Senior Center, because are we going to assume that everything we do either happens in that building or is maybe home visits or transportation, or looking at the whole of Easthampton, is there anything that we want to do that's decentralized? We do need to at least touch on that. What are the possibilities of that? And there are other towns, at least that would have been rumored to be discussing that. And I'd like to look at that as well. It's not necessarily practical. Like, senior housing is spread out all around Easthampton, and it's not like there's one big place where we could go have a satellite office, but who knows? So these are the things that would get discussed. Ideally, how many people would we like to be able to serve on a daily basis moving in and out of there? Just because we have a gym the size of the gym room that we have, is that the future? Will we always have durable medical equipment that takes up a huge amount of square footage? These are the kinds of things staff can grapple with once we have more help, and I can facilitate those discussions. And then we could bring those notes to the board. And maybe in between, we talk with some experts who know best practices around senior centers and what would serve the people of Easthampton the best, as far as we can figure in the 3 or 5 or 7 years that it takes to get to that point.
I think the other piece that is out of the visioning is that, and typically you're using a trained facilitator who controls that visioning process. And it comes under the heading of, there's no such thing as a dumb idea. Throw it out, put it on the board. We'll see if it falls off somewhere. We'll see if the director says later, that's a crazy idea, we can't do that. But one catchphrase that's been picked up recently by the city council as a result of the reuse of the former schools is community connection. So there's a community connection center with Pepin School in the basketball court and the auditorium. And that's what they're afraid of losing. They're hoping that in a RFP that comes back, someone might say, we'll keep the gym for public use, or we'll keep the auditorium for the community connection. Well, I heard about, East Long Meadow, I think, is in the process right now of building a new senior center. And the architect told me that they've built a raised track, walking track in the building. I believe that's what he told me, a raised walking track. They've built an indoor pickleball court. Okay, this is East Long Meadow now. So the point is that that was the community connection. It wasn't just saying, you know, I'm in this box of seniors. It was, no, you happen to be 45 years old. You're going to be a senior someday. Let's invite you in because I need that progression. And it created that community connection. Someone might say those are crazy ideas, but throw them up and see what sticks. You mentioned about the gym only being open when we're open. Maybe the gym ultimately has a card access that lets you in whenever you want, and it's separate from the rest of the building. There's all kinds of, you know, you're only limited by your imagination when it comes to that visioning process.
The other thing that I thought about was, especially with the senior center now, it's, you know, the inability to do food.
Right.
You know, food preparation, and perhaps something, you know, comparable to Westfield's food preparation, put that into a new building, and it's more than just for seniors. It could be for different community
Community
groups as
events,
well.
yeah. Who knows?
Long Meadow just a year ago, just finished their senior center. And they have a chef on site.
Yeah.
And every day, the meals cooked there and given out.
Yeah. All kinds of possibilities.
Right, like right now, Easthampton doesn't have the home delivered meal program operating out of the Easthampton building. Highland Valley Elder Services Kitchen prepares that, but some centers have a contract and they're the ones who create those meals and send those meals out. And I'm learning more about food all the time. It turns out food's very expensive, and some of these places from the outside, it looks like, oh, yay, they have a dining room and all this food they're making, and it's really hard to cover their costs.
Right.
And so that's where it's good, again, an example of the building program, which is what are you going to use the space for and what services are going to be within it. And that's where at the same time that you're talking about the skin of the condo, like where is this thing going to be? You know, are we going to get a site, or are we going to reuse a building and all of that? At the same time, what the guts of the Council on Aging, like what do we offer and what do we do? We're working on that too. And that can definitely be discussed by this board. And so, yeah, is there anything else in terms of what I was saying about building coalitions in the community that anybody had any more to say about?
I guess the one thing that I thought about is identifying different groups within the community. And obviously you're looking for coalitions with people whose interests are aligned with yours. But another piece of that is looking at people who might potentially object to this and try to get a better understanding of what's the nature of their objection. And then given that, how can you address the fact that, you know, whatever their interest is, how can you address that?
Yeah, I'll give you a quick response to that, Joe. For example, for the new school, the biggest objection was the increase in taxes. No one objected to the fact that we needed a new school. No one objected to the fact that our schools were way outdated and we needed new facilities. The big objection was the taxes. But yet, as we continued to present the need, we had at least six public forums that we held to go over with the public that here's why we need a new school. Here's why we need this. Here's why we need this. Here's what we have. Here's what we need. Here's the cost of renovation. Here's the cost of new construction. And 6 public forums, the biggest concern was what it was going to do to taxes. And when it went for a vote for the taxpayers, it passed by something like a 60-40 margin. It passed. And that tax increase on average was going to be $750 a year on the average home. $750 a year, and it passed by a 60% margin. This project is going to be 1/5 of the size of the new school. So we can't ignore the fact that ultimately it would have an impact on taxes.
Sure.
But here's what you get for that. Here's what I'm not increasing my taxes to buy a new vehicle, which has got a life to it. That's going to be, I'm investing in a building that's going to be here for 50 years. That's, so you're absolutely right. There will be objection. I don't think there'll be an objection to why do you need a new senior center? There's going to be an objection to
How do we pay for it?
how do we pay for it? That'll be the objection. And always, no matter what you do, there will be. And we faced them head on and said, here it is. And here's what it will do. Here's what it means. We didn't hide from it. And we got to the finish line.
Were there, I mean, the new school that they just built, was that money all from one source? From tax increases, or was there federal money that?
State money. It was state money. And so we received it was a $109 million project. And about 60% of it was paid for by the state. But the 40% was still a big number.
Yeah.
A big number.
I think we do have a problem here that kids have to go to school. You don't have the same tradition. People don't have to go to the senior center. There's kind of only a small crafty sort of element that had traditionally used it. But you can see them. I mean, okay, saying, so who are your groups? I'm remembering a woman who posted on Next Door Neighbor back around the start of the pandemic, and she was fairly new. And she was complaining about the school. And she said, what about the rest of us? We don't have the computers. Couldn't we go use them? Couldn't we go use the books, music? And I think, and this is, I'm not sure how senior center staff are going to think about this, but like, I like the idea of putting them in. The only way I know Northampton Senior Center is two ways. One is they have the indoor farmers market. That's what got me in with my daughter. And then they did the vaccination, which nobody can plan for, sorry. But I just like, I mean, you said like the sandwich generation doesn't go in. How about meeting the needs of a wider group, which would get more support? And then they would expect something when they became seniors, you know. Brendan used to say, no, they never thought this would happen to them. Nobody thinks they're going to grow, you know. And so just going to.
I think that's part of the, and we have to be careful where we go with that because of staffing, but that's part of, here's something we can do in the new senior center that we can't do in the current one as a potential programming benefit. But I'll just go back to for a moment to those that might have objected to the school. For it to pass by the margin that it did, more than school parents supported that project. And so I'm guessing at the end of the day, we're going to have more than seniors supporting this project as it goes forward.
I think certainly there's an equity argument to be made, given that people are concerned about equity. And when you start looking at compared, you know, the new schools versus, you know, your old post office. I mean,
yeah,
we can appreciate its historical significance, but
yeah,
it's a building that was built for what, the 1930s or something?
For a post office.
Yeah, as a post office.
And it was not built for the public beyond the lobby. Keep that in mind. We've got, you don't have to go into it. But I do want to call, so just going back to what you're saying, Louise, I wasn't saying that the sandwich generation isn't interested and that we need to convince them. I was saying, I think they are interested, in what will be there for them. Absolutely. It's just they might need to be spoken with
Right.
and have that elicited
Right.
because they might not be thinking about it every day. But also I did want to then also call attention to something Tom said, which is you have to be careful what tantalizing programs you say you can offer in a new senior center that you're not offering now, because chances are you'll have the same staffing going into it. I do know that one of the things that we can't do in our center that I would like to see happen that would require more services to be offered, not necessarily paid for by the city, possibly through a grant or some other fee structure, would be some type of respite for families where people who have issues with dementia, cognition can go during the day for certain types of programming and support. There are programs like that out there. Easthampton is completely missing that. And I would need to talk with other centers about how that's gone in their centers. But one thing is for sure, we physically can't accommodate it in a building that's 2 stories and has thresholds you trip over and you can't even tell it's a senior center. There might, so I wouldn't, but I wouldn't want to say, here's some hopes and dreams for things we can do, and we will absolutely do them when we get a new senior center, because we just don't know by the time we're done building a center what will be funded for staffing. And I know Greenfield had that experience where they built, as I mentioned last time, a senior center within a community center. There is no funding for any community center staffing, so they actually can't operate that building as a community center. It's still the same limited staffing they had before.
I think the way we couch that, Cindy, is we say that the new center would give us the opportunity to offer these programs, not the guarantee that we could, but the opportunity to.
Let me just interject here. Leslie, I know you had your hand up a second ago. Would you like to comment? You're up.
Yep, thanks. So I really like the way the discussion is going, because I think there are lots of synergies, potential synergies between these groups and it's things that we might not even be thinking of. So keep that in mind. But the other is just a question I don't need to answer. But I think with some of the, maybe the school building, I think it's helpful to show members of the public what the facility actually looks like, offer tours as part of the process so they can see firsthand the deficiencies of the building.
Yeah.
Are you volunteering to take some people on tour, Leslie?
Oh, I'd be happy to take them on a tour because
Thank you.
it's just, yeah, I need say nothing more. Thank you.
But, thank you, Leslie. And I could just,
Cool.
if I could be recognized, I'm sorry. I'm
We're running short on
so
time, but
impulsive, but just to say, another role potentially for board members and any board member who hasn't been into the center yet, or at least seen the whole building, please come in and we can give, we'd like board members maybe to be ambassadors. I mean, you guys could decide that if that's what you want to do, and I can help train people on some talking points. You can have all the reports that have been done and just kind of craft a few talking points and highlights. I know there are some city councilors interested in touring the building also. And at the same time, there are city councilors who would love seniors to tour the new school. So, yeah.
Yeah, on that regard, real quick, Joe, sorry.
sure, go ahead.
This coming Saturday from noon to 3, I believe, is an open house at the new school. There's food trucks, there's entertainment. I don't know if she pulled it off, but the superintendent was attempting to get the food trucks before in a way that the public would not be paying for the food. But she would they'd have a flat fee, a limited menu. Here's what you can have. And then you get a tour of the building while you're there. So she's expecting upwards of 2,000 people to show up for this event.
Wonderful.
So get there early if you want a parking place.
And we have a table there if anybody wants to come hang out at the table.
Okay. In as much as I'd like to continue, the commitment is 1-hour meeting.
Yes.
So we're at the end of the road. Does anybody have any further comments briefly on what we've just been talking about? Okay, Stan?
Just a caution, that people often think more broadly and more acceptingly about education than seniors. And they think that the more educated the population is, the better the community is. And so that we need to be cognizant that we may not get the level of support that they got for the schools. I mean, I feel that, the senior center is important. A lot of people my age do, but I don't know if we're going to get the same level of support. So I think we should be ready for that.
Okay,
And also keep in mind that when the school was built, the city did a large bond to extend the expenses over a longer period of time. And we may want to look into bonding as well with the city.
okay. Thanks very much. All right, folks, at this point, I'm the chair, and the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. Do I have anyone? Chuck moves for that. Second? Kathy seconds. All right, I think all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Right.
Okay. All right, folks, and our next meeting will be November 16th? 15th, November 15th. Thanks very much for the good discussion today, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thanks.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.